the highest number, in terms of turning out on election day. But immediately, the Independent National Electoral System immediately started reviewing the system, this BVAS thing, get your permanent voter card. As we're evolving, population is growing. But because of the disconnect between the government and the grassroots,
so
people are not,
not
interested. Look at Anambra State. My reference point is always, the governorship election in Anambra State, that we had 1.2 million registered voters, and the person that emerged the winner could not even get 200,000 votes. I was like, wow. In spite of this insecurity. So I now went to history, to the archive, to go and check what is happening in Anambra State. And I discovered that it's always like that. So maybe days ahead, we'll be able to, and after all the results for this election, we'll be able to look at it and conceptualize it that, look, is there improvement across the states? Is there improvement across the country? And what is responsible for the low turnouts? But in terms of awareness, in terms of sensitization, in terms of participation, look at what's the resurgence of youths. Look at the demography. Because INEC, after everything, they break down, they give you a kind of demography of the number of people that actually voted,
yes.
Youths. No, we know that in the northern part of the country, it's like a religion. It's like a religious obligation that you have to fulfill. So come rain, come sunshine, they're always there. They will turn out to vote. So after this exercise, when we tabulate everything, we now do a comparative analysis to what we are getting from the southern part of the country, southeastern part of the country. Maybe there's an improvement or not, but it's too early by and large.
And 4 states,
how many states have we gotten?
Just 4 compared to 32 states and the Federal Capital Territory.
Yes, at the end of the day, we now aggregate everything and we now make our submission to say, look, the percentage compared to what happened last year and what happened in 2015 and juxtaposing what happened in 2011. For me, 2011 was it for me, when the country recorded 64%. And the number of registered voters, there was a kind of surge. Now, this is all-time high. The number of registered voters, 93 million people, and the people that got their PVC, 87 million. We've never had it as high as this.
So and we're happy about that. Look, the number of people we don't have in our electoral net in that code it's higher than when you put all of the West African countries together.
I'm telling you.
But my question really is your election as big as your registered voters or as your accredited voters?
Is my election
as big? Because we say, oh, look, we have one of the biggest election in the country because of the number of registered voters. 400
billion naira budget.
So, absolutely. But
400 billion naira budget.
But is your election as big as your registered voters? Or you should be looking at your accredited voters to measure how big your election is.
Turnouts on election day. That's what should be the yardstick. What's the point? You have
having a lot of registered voters.
The number of people that are from the registered voters, the number of people carrying their PVC. Do you understand? You don't carry your PVC and keep it at home on election day.
People just use it as ID cards.
That's what we're trying to discourage.
Just on their PVCs to ID cards.
That's what we're trying to discourage here. In 2019, President Muhammadu Buhari, led with 15 million. And you begin to look at the number of people. There's going to be a population census now in the next 1 month, April precisely, stroke May. And if we are projecting that we are 200 million people.
And now we even say we're over 200 million.
We are over 200 million people. And over 200 million people. And if we want to elect, the last time we elected the president and we elected our president with 15 million people. So
that's quite low. We know that some people are not up to 18 yet, so maybe that also contributes to that. But let me ask you, let's turn our attention
to we have the highest in the world.
Absolutely.
The number of the youth age.
Yes. And it continues to increase. It continues to increase. But let's talk about what played out here today. Let's turn our attention now to the National Coalition Center. We saw that, look, some party agents are not quite, not quite, they're not agreeing, or they're not in agreement rather, with the figures being read out by some state returning officers. For example, they have said that, look, they have cited alleged, for them there are allegations of discrepancies with the Ekiti results, and we also saw them mention issues around the Kwara results. But the INEC chairman did say something. His response was, and I wanted to look at both sides. His response was, most of these issues should be raised at the local government level, where where collation is happening at that level. Your party agents should be able to say, no, we do not agree. That shouldn't be brought to. Once it gets here, it's assumed that everyone is in agreement at the state. I want you to look at both sides, and you've been covering elections for years. How do you respond?
Now, even at the polling units, immediately after the exercise, your form EC8A. When you see the form EC8A, there's a space for party agents after the whole exercise at the polling unit level that, we counted 100 number of votes here, this amount of votes here, this is what was given to PDP, this is what was given to APC, and so on. At the end of the day, agents will now sign. The agents, the party agent at that polling unit, the number of parties that participated in that election, they will now sign in agreement that this was actually a reflection of what transpired. So from there, it will now go to the ward units. It will go through the same scrutiny. It will be submitted, collated. It will get to local government units. From the local government unit, it gets to states. It will go through this scrutiny before you come here. So, if you want to raise any issue, I feel that this is like the final place that the votes and everything, you would have raised that issue before it gets, to this level. This is like the highest point. To start tampering with what has been certified. I'm not a lawyer, I don't know, but it's quite difficult. We expect that what is done here, just simple collation.
So what happens when the party agent doesn't, it says, look, we do not believe that these are the figures we got at that level, at the local government level or at the state level? What happens if they are in disagreement with those results at that level?
You see, if you remember in 2015, there's always this drama, the collation center. If you remember the saga and everything, it's psychological. Sometimes all the political parties, let me tell you, for sure, they have their situation. They have their party agents across 176,000 polling units. By Saturday nights, by Sunday morning, that's if fresh election, was conducted, those areas, they have the results. So, if anybody is losing out, they do everything to stall the process. At any given time, you see that if
you mean the process at the collation center?
To stop the process, even at this center. If the Independent National Electoral Commission, if the chairman is not focused, if he's not using wisdom, if he's not tactful, you can derail the entire process here. But I'm telling you that they know, they've seen the results. They know what they are doing, they've seen the results, they've collated it. All the party agents would have submitted their results, and in their situational rooms, they would have collated it, and they know something is going wrong. This thing is not going for us. Let's try and stop. So let's try and stall the process. That if we try and stall the process, that's something will change. If we try and stall the process, we can get them, But the bottom line is that at any given time you have something like this, check it out. Because what we are going through now, what we are witnessing now, is the pace at which it will get to this final National Collation Center.
All right.
The election has been conducted in the last 48 hours.
So there is a statement now being put out by the All Progressives Congress presidential candidate. He's asking that he has appealed to the people of Lagos State to be calm and eschew any act that can lead to breakdown of law and order. He said that the outcome of the election in Lagos, where Labour Party won the presidential election, should not be a source of provocation, saying that the beauty of democracy is that people have a right to vote for the candidate of their choice. He also further said that as a Democrat, he is bound to accept the outcome of that election, of any election, whether favorable or not. In a statement released Monday by the Presidential Campaign Council, signed by Director of Media and Publicity, Mr. Bayo Nanuga, Tinubu expressed serious concern over reports of violence in parts of the state, especially reported attacks on some traders of Igbo origin. The former Lagos State Governor condemned any form of violence against people of any ethnic group in Lagos. The fact that the APC narrowly lost the Lagos State to another party should not be the reason for violence, and that coming from Tinubu. As a Democrat, and I'm quoting now, he says, as a Democrat, you win some, you lose some. We must allow the process to continue unhindered across the country while we maintain peace and decorum, end quote. So I want to get your reaction to this.
Yes, Lagos State is a very interesting terrain. When it was in 1999, since 1999, when it used to be the Alliance for Democracy. Now, Lagos State was the fortress of the opposition. Lagos State was the only state that held on, while the People's Democratic Party reigned supreme from 1999 till the end of their reign in 2014. From the Alliance for Democracy to the Action Congress, to the Action Congress of Nigeria, now to the All Progressive Congress. You get it. Lagos State had held sway, both at the presidential level and at the governorship level. So this is like a turning point in the history, political history of that state. That, after this number of years, since 1999 to this time, some people, they've been able to rise up to the occasion to say, we are going to challenge the status quo. And guess what? 4 years ago, the major dominant party, the two dominant parties in Nigeria, the People's Democratic Party and the All Progressive Congress. Guess what? 8 months ago, nobody thought that a party they call the Labour Party would just come from behind to challenge. We're even saying that, look, this is the votes that naturally would go to the People's Democratic Party has been broken, has been divided, and a portion of it, a chunk of it, has been taken by the Labour Party. This is not the first time that this will be happening in Lagos State, but we've not had a sweep like this, a neck-on-neck challenge like this. If you remember the 2015 election, we had like 6 seats from the 40 seats, 6 or 8 from the 40 seats of the Lagos State House of Assembly, won by the People's Democratic Party. They won 2 or 3 seats at the House of Representatives level. So they were getting closer and closer by the year. That was the People's Democratic Party. And the good news for the All Progressive Congress there is that the number of House of Representatives, it's a very funny election to analyze. In the presidential race, it was lost. And it was that same day that the conduct of the National Assembly election, and in the 3 senatorial districts that has been recorded so far, the All Progressive Congress returned to their seats. Another irony, the members of House of Representatives also returned at 80% of the members. But we have an upset in Etiosa.
Absolutely. We also seen states, not just in Lagos, across the country where incumbents have been flawed in elections. So what does this tell you about where we are, especially in this country today, and then the conduct of our elections?
It's a kind of paradigm shift. There's a kind of revolution, a silent revolution brewing. What happened in Enugu State, the incumbent governor, after 7, with the war chest. Normally, the National Assembly is seen like a retirement ground for governors. After 7, 8 years, you go with your war chest, you go with your structure, you go with everything as the godfather of the party. You now be in the position to choose this and this. But unfortunately, it didn't happen in Enugu State. Unfortunately, Benue State, Otom, it didn't happen for Samuel Otom or Benue State.
A turning point indeed, absolutely, Ayo. We'll continue to get more results, we'll continue to analyze them. But let's go on a break. When we return, we'll have more to talk about. Stay with us. 2023 here on TV series. Just before that break, I was speaking with our political editor and senior political correspondent Ayodele Ozugbakun, and he's still with us at the National Coalition Center where we are live. Now, we were talking earlier about that statement released by the presidential candidate of the APC, talking about the violence, that he has gotten reports of violence in Lagos and he's not in support of any sort of violence. Again, I want to speak to what just happened in Lagos. We were making that analysis before I mentioned the issue of paradigm shift.
Yes, because that rebuttal is timely. That rebuttal is to send a signal that, look, I've not told anybody, because they still have their eyes on the ball. This is a presidential election that a lot of things, will be unraveled with time. And some of them, they have their situation room and they see that, look, I am still on course. But whatever happens to Lagos, it's going to be a big damage if they are not able to protect that constituency in the presidential election. Now,
I'm guessing we'll find out who is still on course and who is not on course as INEC continues to reel out the figures from different states. But I wanted to ask you how important, because going into this election, you know that it was really, it was preceded by ethnic and religious sentiments. You saw all of the statements being put out from different groups across the country and different circles across the country. How important is it right now that whether presidential candidate, whether National Assembly candidates begin to make statements calling for calm in the country?
Yes, it's good for a big figure like Bola Tinubu to talk about Lagos State. They refer to him as the father of modern day Lagos, as in he has been there and he has paid, a kind of big price in terms of choosing successors in Lagos, so that putting forward some people and the Gaussians have been voting for those guys. With successive administration from Bola Tinubu to Babatunde Raji Fashola to Akinwumi Ambode, now to Babajide Sanwo-Olu. So if he's talking now, if that constituency is troubled, it should be a source of worry to him, because Lagos is a cosmopolitan state that you had every other ethnic group and tribe. We've been coexisting without rancor. So this election was keenly contested, and normally a shift in status quo, something that the dominance of the All Progressive Congress for years. If there's a shift, there will be reaction. There will be reaction. But the ability of the security agency, the governor, which is the chief security officer, to maintain peace in the state, and people like Bola Tinubu coming out to say, look guys, I'm not interested in this, I'm not in support of this, that whatever, they should be calm. After all, we still have the governorship election in 2 weeks' time. We still have the State House of Assembly election in 2 weeks' time. So if you know what happened, the level of damages that was wreaked, the level of havoc that was wreaked on Lagos during the NSAS period, Lagos suffered the highest loss. We can't afford to allow anything to degenerate to breakdown of law and order. So it's a clearing call to all security agencies that, look, this is the time. With 20 million people, 30,000 policemen will not be enough to control a city like Lagos. Lagos is grossly under-policed. Yes. So they need a kind of reinforcement right now with other security agencies to help forestall the breakdown of law and order. Because if Lagos cough, sneeze.
Right, with the revenue that is also coming from
it's a mini Nigeria.
Yes,
it's the hub, it's the commercial hub.
But I was asking earlier, how important is it that, look, we begin to hear this kind of statements coming from other candidates, especially presidential candidates and those who ran for National Assembly of positions. How important is it that they also begin to call for calm? Because we already see that, look, a lot of people are feeling aggrieved. And it's normal when you as you result, and INEC has only read, let's just also note that, look, it is only 4 states that we've seen here today. We still have about 32 states coming in, and the Federal Capital Territory.
Even at the end of the day, you win some, you lose some. For that fact that your candidate is not winning, that fact that your candidate did not win ultimately, that does not, that should not lead to breakdown of law and order. At any contest, they're bound to be winner, they're bound to be losers, and the winner should be magnanimous in victory and should be able to take people together and should be able to tell people that, look, guys, we're going to run a government of national unity that is not going to be a sectional government, that is going to bring the country together. Since 2015, let me tell you, we've not gotten over the 2015 election. The 2015 election, after the election, divided us across ethnic lines. The 2015 election divided us across religious lines. And I will say that somebody like President Muhammadu Buhari did not do enough or deliberate effort to close that gap. Maybe in terms of his appointment and everything, a lot of people are saying that he might not have done enough to integrate some people and to bring people and to restore confidence of people together. That's
so
why
it will take a lot to
it
do.
will take, yes, and another government that is coming on May 29, we have to bring everybody together.
I would also like you to react to, we're talking about how some party agents earlier were saying, look, we are not in agreement with these results that have been read. They were asking INEC to show side by side the results being announced by the state returning officers, along with that on the IRF. But I want to react particularly to, we saw how, Gino Milai reacted to this. I mean, you saw how for a while he stayed on that issue. How do you react?
I'm telling you that, look, yes, the Independent National Electoral Commission might not be a perfect agency, but what is happening now is that I think they should have a closed-door meeting with these party agents and to have a kind of agreement on, code of ethics and what you should do and what you should not do, because at the end of the day, everybody, people are watching, and this will not in any way, out of the 36 states now, how many states do we have down? Still a long way to go. So a lot of people, and there's also room when you feel so aggrieved if it does not be addressed at the internal level from the local government polling units and everything. If they can't address everything here, you still have the right to go to electoral tribunals.
Okay, so but let me ask you, how important is it, because people are questioning INEC about the IRF, how important is it that INEC also begins to reassure people that, look, this particular process is credible, this particular process, because again, the issue here basically for a lot of people is, especially those party agents, is that, look, we do not have enough results being posted on the IRF. How important is it that INEC continues to
Now, that IRF, the way it's constructed, that portal, it can only accommodate 2 million people all over the world, to check at a time. Now, this is the first time we're going to deploy this kind of technology. And the 2022 Electoral Act, was actually, signed so that it will accommodate for the use of technology. And this is the first time we are going to legitimately be deploying this technology, and this like a test run, like the beavers, like that IRF server and everything. But it will not start on the perfect notes. There will be hiccups here and there. And I tell you, that's why there's always, what INEC did was that as they are having, results uploaded into the IRF, they're still making use of their form EC8A. So they have to see the form physically, taking the form physically from local government to this place. That is what is causing this delay. Ordinarily, if it's something that has been uploaded on Saturday, you just calculate, and today they'll reel out the results.
Perhaps the logistics issue also coming from INEC, which led to some of these delays. INEC also has to address. But are we likely to see more of this kind of reactions coming from party agents?
Yes, we are going to see. We are going to see. This is just the beginning, and it might be a very long day. But I'm saying that in the 2022 Electoral Act, it has given the autonomy to INEC, financial autonomy. Number one, that a year before, clear 365 days before any election, money must be, according to the 2022 Electoral Act, money must be released to the Independent National Electoral Commission. It's no longer under the presidency. They don't have to go cap in hand to go and beg for money. That means a year ago, they would have released this money for logistics, for everything, to be in place. And the humongous amount, talking about 400 billion naira. And we're still talking about logistics. Challenges. We're still talking about late, I don't know. So it took them 4 years to plan. And I pray that one day we get it right.
But Ayo, one of the things that everyone is talking about is that when are we going to, and when is all of this going to end, this process? Because it was faster in 2019. It was also faster in 2015. We don't know when this is going to end. But by your projection, by what you see now, when do you think that this process is going
According to the findings by Yaga Africa, I think it was 26% that actually recorded 26% nationwide that actually started voting on that Saturday, 8:30. So if you have 26%, some people did not start voting till 12 noon. Some started voting 5 p.m. As at 9:30, 11, 12 midnight, people were still voting. Yesterday, don't forget Sunday, those areas they had problem, people still voted. So we have to be patient. It is those
how patient? Because right now people are just, and because of the anxiety we see on social media, people cannot wait to get these results. I'm sure you've been getting calls
from
people who
what's
know
happening,
you to say,
what's the texture of things and everything.
Tell me what is
blank.
going
And
on.
because INEC has assured Nigerians actually that what happened in Edo State, true. What happened in Edo State, immediately after the election, by 4 p.m. that day, 5 p.m. we went to the INEC portal. We had a texture. We had like a kind of straight idea of what's the outcome of the election. So by the time we started, the collation center, opened, we knew who was leading as at that time. So the collation process was just like formality. But this year, logistics, technological hiccups, everything.
And then they also attack on some polling units where
yes, everything comes together. So INEC did not submit those results. The plan was that immediately at your polling unit after this thing is being counted, that it's going to be uploaded and people will see it real time. That's what people have been questioning since Saturday. That if they've seen the result real time since Saturday, but as a Saturday night, nothing was downloaded on that website.
I think again those logistics issues, created by some of the not being properly handled by INEC also led to some of these issues. But I was listening to someone earlier who said this idea of suspicion always in an election cycle, that probably that also should be addressed, because you always seem as to look. There's always suspicion, or one party or the other party, is always, people always think that one is up to foul play. That's where INEC comes in to show that the process is credible.
In a country like Ghana, I've covered Ghana. I've covered their presidential election. I've covered it, I think, 4 cycles now. From before Nana Akufo-Addo, the President Atta Mills, before the emergence of, Now, I discovered that it's like an institution. Their own electoral commission, politicians don't just open their mouth to fault the electoral commission. They have a kind of belief, there's credibility. They can accuse, the parties, but not the institution
itself. Because
the institution has shown over time. As at the time I covered the election there, it was led by one man called Afari Gyang. I don't know, maybe it's still there. But you can't be talking about that institution because over time, the consistency, the neutrality, the independence. So now this is the Independent National Electoral Commission. So if INEC had over time shown that neutrality, if they've over time, built that trust, we shouldn't be talking about questioning their ability or questioning. And, don't forget, there's always what we call, the lawyers call locus classicus, as in when they get to the first time that we make history in courts, and cases have been taken to court, to Supreme Court level, and the Supreme Court will fault the process. You know, INEC is always a defendant, and the Supreme Court will fault the umpire, and the Supreme Court will have to rearrange, sometimes rearrange the figure, and sometimes have to give somebody, you know, make somebody the governor from the courtroom, faulting the process. So we must strengthen our institution. We must strengthen that institution called the Independent National Electoral Commission to the extent that all political parties will learn to trust them. We must strengthen it to the extent that, you know, no internal infiltration should be allowed. You know, no compromise, no attempt to use any INEC staff to subvert the process.
I think that was 2019 or 2015 where some INEC officials were also found
yes, to be prosecuted, that none of them will be, you know. So we are the process is evolving, and I'm sure one day we'll get there, we'll get to the extent that that institution will be foolproof. That look,
how close are we?
We're still far from that.
Because, you know, I know that people will always say, look, we're evolving, we're not there yet. But, you know, are we closer? Because, again, that's where it is. That's where Nigeria, that's what Nigerians want to know. Are we closer?
We're moving. It might not be at the expected speed. There was a time in Nigeria that results were written, election result sheets were written in hotel rooms. There was a time in Nigeria, if you remember, you know, we had a man called Ephraim Apata in 1999, from Ephraim Apata to Gabriel Gubadia, from Gabriel Gubadia to Professor Maurice Iwu, from Professor Maurice Iwu to, what's this one that won the election? Atairu Jega. From Atairu Jega, we now have Professor Mahmoud. And a lot of people will tell you that Atairu Jega did creditably well.
He raised the bar.
He raised the bar. As at the time of Professor Maurice Iwu, they go to court, the number of litigation you get, the number of registered voters, you know, people will win more than the figure. There was a place in Brass in 2003 that they had, I think they had 99 registered voters. The person that emerged the winner won with 120. When he got to court, it was like, wow.
Where did the other figures come from?
Yes, there was a time Mike Tyson was in our... We had Mike Tyson, we had Holyfield, we had a lot of different characters. And it took a certain political party to go to court, and the courts, interestingly, as at that time, now allowed, that political party to bring in a forensic expert. The late Andre Forte was brought in that time, and they now had to discover that, look, most of these ballot paper were printed with palm kernel. As in, people will sit down and use palm kernel when they get tired. There was thumb. They'll use palm kernel to thumb printing, and it was subject, to forensic test by experts, and they discovered that it's the same person that did over 3,000 votes. There's several venues. If you remember, INEC in process, Inglorious INEC. But today, we've got it to a situation where before, if your name is not, the card reader is not reading your fingerprints, you bypass it, you fill an incident form, and you'll be allowed to vote.
Which is also an improvement.
Yes, but today...
But how has that bettered the electoral process?
Yes.
Because people want to know that, look, there was a clamor for making this an electronic process. Are we better now because we have an electronic process?
We're improving. Because you must follow the best practice. What is obtained in other parts of the world. We couldn't have, at the point in time, Nigerians in diaspora, maybe in the next 4 years, there will be a legislation, they will be able to vote. At the point in time, you might not need to come out, you just send your mail in, send your vote, cast in your vote, and INEC will take it. In the future, you don't have to have a public holiday that everything will be grounded. I've covered the election in even Mali.
But don't we also have to get to the place where we have a security in place? Because if you want to have a situation where everybody can move around, then what about security?
It's maturity. I've covered the election in Bamako, Mali. It was a working day. There was a polling unit in front of Idumota market. People were buying and selling, and at the same time, people were going to stop by and exercise their franchise. It's not like war. Election must not be like war. There's curfew, no movement between 6 p.m. down to 6 p.m. No, you don't do that. I won't say other civilized crime.
That's what I was
neighboring
asking,
countries.
Because a huge part of this, many people will say, look, it's really about security. And that when you allow people to move around, you have to have enough security to do checks and to ensure that you do not have, again, because we have criminal elements amongst us.
The bottom line,
so
we're
what
under
about
police.
security?
The Nigerian police cannot boast of having 500,000, in terms of manpower.
Even with the addition of the National Immigration Service to the
everybody together,
NSS was about 427,000.
They're not to 2 million. Policing and guarding over 200 million people. I'm telling you, all these agencies together, they're under 2 million. If they're up to, it can be NSCTC, immigration, civil defense, everybody together. And there's a basic standard. We're under policed. That's why we have to clamp everybody inside. We have to do, but it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. We can't continue this way. We can't continue this way. And we must have a kind of paradigm shift in the mentality that election should not be war.
Absolutely.
We should not have.
But let me ask you, as we begin to wind down the conversation, because I know that we're going to get reports from across Nigeria as we continue to have this conversation. Because collation is going on across Nigeria.
Yes.
And some states have wound down, but we'll continue to get
the electoral officers
will eventually come in. For
here.
those that are still collating, TVC News will have an eye on them, and we'll continue to report, those figures. But I want to ask you, what do we expect in the next few days?
In the next few days, it's going to be dramatic. I'm telling you, it's going to be dramatic. Nigeria, we've not gotten to that stage that you say, oh, the spirit of sportman, oh, congratulations. The thing that happened in 2019, that former President Goodluck Jonathan made the call, the 545, the famous 545 call, made that call to Muhammadu Buhari and said, congratulations, Mr. President, and said, I am not going to court. But already, with what I've seen here, it's a foundation to tell you that, look, the litigation, yes, if you decide to go to court,
it's well within your right.
But there must not be breakdown of law and order at any given time. It mustn't be encouraged.
Thank you so much, Ayo. I'm sure we'll have you over and over again for analysis as we continue, events continue to unfold here at the National Collation Center.
I'm grounded here.
Yes, you don't have a choice, actually.